solo. Don't give it up now, man. Don't give it up, give it up, give it up, give it up.
Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is going to be a follow-up video to a video I did previously. I filmed that like sometime between midnight and 1 o'clock, around there, and I feel like I ranted a little bit more than I wanted to, and this is going to be more of a, hey, let me try to tell you what I'm thinking when I'm a little more coherent, you know? So, basically, we're about to start a brand new meta, and these are going to be our big three. The new big three. The previous big three, you could say, were Zoro, Whitebeard, and Law. Now that Whitebeard has been nerfed into almost uncertainty, Katakuri has taken that slot. Now, my last video I did talk about some of the matchups, some of the weaknesses, and the strengths of each deck, in comparison to other decks that you're going to see in your in the meta and then on the higher tier of competitions and stuff like that. So, I want to break it down a little bit with a couple different slides here. So, let me show you. All right. So, basically, these are some of the weaknesses, possible weaknesses. They'll have question marks next to them. Matchups into each leader. We'll start with Zoro. Doflamingo could have a decent matchup into Zoro, but with Zoro being able to flood the board as quickly as he can, and with the constant amount of searchers he has, constantly refilling his hand, it's really hard to whittle Zoro's resources down, as you could do in set 2. It's a little tougher than it was in set 2, even though the deck has gone back to the set 2 style of play. But if you can play right, if you can see your 9 drops, you can bounce some stuff back to the bottom of their deck, because you do have that with some of the new OPO set 3 cards. So there is a chance that Dofi, in the right hands, could be a really good matchup into Zoro. But it's still questionable if you can see if you aren't able to build a board quick enough. Katakuri, of course, another member of the big three, can be a bit of a tough match. How I win my matches against Zoro is, because I'm obviously a Katakuri player, I turtle up early on, and then hope that my life has enough character triggers, so that way I can start whittling down their board, which of course lowers the amount of resources in hands, or draining the resources in their hand. But if your triggers are bad, if you can't defend your life early enough, then your Katakuri's not a threat to Zoro. My roommate plays Zoro. He's an amazing Zoro player, and I lose most of the time against him. But against other Zoro players that I play on the sim, that's typically my strategy. But it's still a tough match. Zoro can just flood the board way too quickly, and Katakuri needs to turtle up and be incredibly defensive in order to stand a chance. That's why it's just a question mark there. Rob Lucci, same thing. In hindsight, in theory, Rob Lucci should have a decent matchup into Zoro. Lots of cards that KO, like low to the ground cards. Rob Lucci can swing twice, just like Eustace Kid can do. But once again, it comes down to if Zoro can build a board quick enough and apply enough pressure early on, and if it makes it hard for Rob Lucci to feel comfortable playing some of the bigger cost cards like Sakazuki, Kuzan, and sometimes even Isho. So if Zoro can apply enough pressure early on, then Rob Lucci doesn't stand a chance. But if Rob Lucci can play enough blockers, build up a good late game board, protect his life, there's always that chance. And of course, other Zoro. Zoro v Zoro, if one Zoro gets to go first, already they're going to be able to start swinging in quicker, and that early game pressure, even just one turn earlier, might be enough to secure the win. But it is always, when it's Zoro versus Zoro, it's always going to be who can manage their resources better. But as you can see, all of Zoro's are question marks, because there's no clear-cut deck that is 100% this is an easy win into Zoro. Standing next to Zoro, we have Katakuri, and this one is a little more clear-cut. We have Magellan. Magellan, I actually played last night. Great player. Magellan is super scary into Katakuri because if they can get their curve off, if they can play their 5-drop Magellan soon or very early on their curve, because typically Katakuri likes to go second, Magellan likes to go first, plays their 5-drop, and now sets me back 1 Dawn. And then that ruins the curve. So Magellan absolutely can be a threat to Katakuri, but if Katakuri goes, if they can't get their Magellan off early, and they can't disrupt the curve quick enough, then Magellan doesn't stand a chance. So that's why it's a question mark. Law into Katakuri is Law wins. Law floods the board way too quickly, bouncing stuff back and forth. You can stop a Zoro attack, you can stop a Zoro attack. He's just gonna bounce it back to hand, play it again. It's in a way, it's quicker than Zoro, and just more technical, obviously. So against Law, Katakuri, most of the time, I'd say 90% of the time, will fall. And of course, the mirror match Katakuri. If you go into a mirror match and you have to go first, that does upset your curve quite a bit, which means that they're going to be able to play the 10-drop Big Mom before you. And when it comes to the mirror match, it really is who can play their Big Mom first and who can play a second Big Mom first. It's really rough. You always want to go second in a mirror match. And of course, Zoro. Zoro floods the board super quickly, applies too much pressure, and then, like I said before, talking about the Zoro matchup, it's just if you apply too much pressure too quick and you don't get any decent triggers off, it's not gonna work. But it can be a close match if you play your cards right. If you see the cards in life that you need, you can really you can last long enough to play a 10-drop Big Mom. That's a big one. And finally, we have Law. And really, just kind of going over it, Law really has 2 big ones. Zoro can just flood the board way too quick. Law, you want to play a slower game so you can build your board and then start swapping things around. So in the Zoro matchup, it is almost all the time you will lose to Zoro. But if you are an incredibly talented player, you could win the matchup, especially the player last night who did win against Zoro in the final round. Then Rob Lucci is kind of he basically... hit the mic there. You would think Rob Lucci has a decent chance because he can KO a lot of low-to-the-ground cards. But Law doesn't like to swing with a lot of his low-cost cards like Zoro does. So it's really hard to attack them via, it's hard to KO them via attacking, because most of the time you're going to rely on your abilities, which makes it a little tougher than the Zoro match. But once again, Law is incredibly technical, incredibly proficient in the use of its resources, so it is really hard for Lucci to get the matchup, to win the matchup. Blue is really hard because Blue's cards of bouncing cards back to hand don't work because you want that in a Zoro game. Even the blue cards that, but not Zoro, in a Law game, in the blue cards that you play to bounce stuff to the bottom of the deck is 5 costs or less, which is really good into the Law blocker, but you're sacrificing so much resources when Law doesn't have to use that much resources. That's the thing. Law is incredibly proficient with his resources, just like Zoro. More so, these two are incredibly more resource proficient than Katakuri. So, these are kind of just my thoughts on the top 3 decks in the meta, and what decks they have a good matchup with and a bad matchup with. It is going to be difficult. Especially... we are heading into new territory because this restriction list is not in Japan, it is only here in America. So, with that being said, I have done a quick tier list. I was thinking about doing the tier list, as its own video, but might as well throw it in here. Alright, as you can see on the tier list, I have sorted out into always topping, rogue, depends, and trash. Right now, we have at Always Topping, Zoro, Law, and Katakuri. These decks are always going to be in the top 16, in my opinion. Actually, probably in the top 8. These decks are just the best of the best. They are the big 3. In Rogue tier, we have Eustace Kid, Rob Lucci, Doflamingo, Magellan, Croc, Arlong, Red Luffy, Kinemon, Kuro, and Nami. These are decks that are going to be, I'd say prevalent. I can definitely see these decks being in the top 64 to top 32 because they have really interesting matchups into the big 3. And piloted by the right person, they can really just demolish the player. Kuro in particular has an interesting matchup into Zoro, just kind of realizing that right now. But for the most part, it's wasting too much resources in order to get them double attack. Nami, you have to play, you have to be the solitaire player. That's the only way this is going to work. You have to be incredibly defensive, incredibly smart. Magellan, like I said, interesting matchup into Katakuri. Doflamingo, interesting matchup into Zoro. Possibly Law, possibly. Eustace Kid, hey, Eustace Kid's still kicking. Deck is amazing. Film Kid is nuts. Arlong in the right hands has the great triggers of yellow with some of the really cool on-play cards of green. Solid deck. Crocodile took a bit of a hit. He's not as good now that Whitebeard isn't as prevalent, but he's decent. He's not bad. In Depends, we have Whitebeard, Garp, Sanji, Ivankov, Z, Kaido, Blurple Kaido, Blurple Croc, Yellow Big Mom, Iceberg, and Ace. Ace unfortunately took a big hit with the Whitebeard nerfs. Whitebeard obviously took the huge hit. I don't know if that deck's really going to see play anymore, but I am giving it a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. The rest of these decks really just aren't as good right now. I heard that some of them are going to get support in set 4 and in set 5, so that may change. And finally, trash, we have Smoker, Shanks, Sakazuki, Red Green Luffy, Odin, King, Uda, and Black Yellow Big Mom. Smoker just fell off now that Rob Lucci is a thing because it's a better black leader. Shanks, I really like the deck, but unfortunately it's not as consistent in aggro as the other decks. Sakazuki, same thing, just not as good of a black leader. It's interesting, but not as good. Red Green Luffy, might as well play just Red Luffy at that point. Odin, if he gets more Land of Wano support, he could be up there. I have seen some topping King lists, which is surprising, but for the most part, I think his ability works against his color. You want to be at 10 Dawn, but you play a bunch of cards that remove your Dawn, so it's weird. Uda, interesting. I've seen some people topping with Uda, but once again, it's just a worse Luffy, in my opinion. And then Black, Yellow, Big Mom, I feel like the colors don't clash. Don't cooperate as much as they should. They kind of clash with each other. But yeah, these are, I kind of went through a little quick here, but these are just my opinions on the current meta, upcoming meta that we are going to be seeing. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. I would love to hear your opinions because I love theory crafting. I love talking about the meta of any card game I play. So let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. Remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel because we are now on our way to 500 subs. That's the next goal. And I will see you guys on the next video. Take care.
Here's how the story goes. We find out by the treasure in the grand line. There's no doubt. The pirate whose eye is on it, he'll sing. I'll be king of the pirates. I'm gonna be king.
His name is Luffy.
That's Monkey D. Luffy.
King of the